Sometimes trying to find the right drum kit can feel like a total gamble. That's not what I'm looking for right now. That's a little bit weird. Yes! This is exactly what I was looking for. So by the end of this video, I'm gonna teach you everything that you need to know to be able to find the perfect drum set for yourself. Let's jump into it. So in finding the right drum set for you, you have to ask yourself the question, should you get an acoustic kit or an electric kit? Well, first you have to analyze your circumstances and intentions. First, do you live where you have to stay very quiet? Are you someone who just wants to buy one drum set that requires no maintenance at all? If so, then an electric kit may be a really great option for you. So let's go over a few great e-kit options at a few different price ranges. When it comes to pros of an e-kit, it's obviously very quiet. It takes up a smaller amount of space than an acoustic kit, and there's virtually no upkeep. You traditionally don't need to get more drumsticks or buy new cymbals or new heads. Plus, you have the versatility to change your entire drum sound with the press of a button. And the cons are, you probably can't play a lot of live shows with an e-kit. You technically can, but I think an acoustic kit would be better suited in that scenario. With an e-kit, you don't get the real feel of a drum set. However, consider an acoustic kit if being loud in your space isn't an issue. So the pros here would be to have complete control over your sound. You have the versatility to play live, plus you get the real feel of hitting actual drums. And the cons are they are very loud and they require the maintenance of new heads, cymbals, sticks, and tuning. If you're going the acoustic route, there's a lot to consider. So let's break it down by what genre of music you are typically playing, because this will help us inform what type of materials and sizes we should go for. Typically, smaller drums have a smaller sound that do better in higher tunings, and bigger drums have bigger, boomier sounds that do better in lower tunings. Now, jazz music typically has a smaller and tighter sound, which oftentimes can require smaller drums that are tuned a bit higher. If you are looking for a jazz kit, here are some sizes I recommend. Now, when it comes to pop music, what you are gonna want is versatility. And the reason for that is within pop music itself, there's a lot of different subgenres. So when it comes to sizes for pop music, here's my suggestions. Now let's get a little bit heavier and talk more about rock music. Here, we are going to want big sounds. So here are some ideas for rock drum sizes. But if you're gonna simplify to a 2-tom setup, I would recommend going with the 16 by 16 inch floor tom and the 12 by 8 rack tom. Okay, next we need to talk about what material your drums are made out of. And in this case, we're talking about the different types of wood, because this can drastically change the sound of your kit. So for entry-level kits, these are all gonna be made from poplar. It has softer highs and mids with a warm low end. But as we start to enter the mid to high tier price points, we get a wide variety of woods that we can choose. So let's take a look at maple wood. This is the most common wood for drums, has an even amount of highs, mids, and lows. Then you have woods like birch, which have boosted high frequencies, which are perfect for getting a loud crack and very punchy sounding drums. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have mahogany, which has big, boomy, fatter sounds. And then bubinga is very sensitive and punchy. So if you want a drum that's very articulate, bubinga is a great wood to go with. So these are the classic woods to look out for, but something that you have to keep in mind is also how many plies it has. So this is how many layers of that wood exist in the drum. Basically, the rule of thumb here is that the more plies that the drum has, the better it's gonna do in higher pitches, and it's going to be much louder. If you have less plies, it's gonna do better in lower tunings, and it's going to be a quieter drum. Okay, now let's talk about metal, because what type of metal your drum is made out of can greatly affect the sound. Now, a couple things to note about metal is that this typically is found in snare drums, and metal generally has more life to it, so it's a little bit louder and can sometimes have more overtones. But Now let's break down the different types of metal, starting off with steel. Steel drums are pretty all-purpose. They are a little bit on the brighter side with pronounced body and overtones. Now typically people would grab a steel snare for rock or even metal, but it's also pretty all-purpose. Like I said, depending on what head you put on it, you can control this thing and get a lot of versatility from it. Now aluminum, I have an aluminum snare, but it is currently in London. That's a whole other story. This has a very clear sound, but with less sustain than a lot of other metal drums, which makes it incredibly versatile, and it's one of the most popular material for metal snares by far. If you want a snare drum that's going to cut through the mix and really crack, brass is an incredible option to go with. And finally, you can go with a copper snare if you want a darker sound. It's perfect for tuning low and getting a nice warm sound. Now I know when we're trying to choose gear, sometimes it can get incredibly overwhelming and we can feel stuck with all the options. I notice this a lot in drummers playing too, where they get in drumming ruts and they feel stuck with their progress, where they feel confused every single time they step behind the kit. But that's why I made an incredible free course called The Drummer's Guide to Getting Unstuck, so that you can make constant progress on the kit without the confusion and without the rut. So click right here to get instant access to that free course. But now let's keep learning about drums. So now let's get into some recommendations based on different price points, starting off with kids drum sets. The first kids kit I would recommend is the Ludwig Pocket Kit. This is a 4-piece drum set made from hardwood and comes in at $270. The next kids kit I would take a look at, and potentially is even a step up, is the Pearl Roadshow Junior. Now this is a 5-piece drum set made out of poplar, and that comes in at $319. And one thing to note is I think the Roadshow Junior kit has slightly better quality hardware. And before diving into the rest of the list, full disclosure, I am a Pearl artist, so those are my preferred drums, but I will of course include other things for you to check out too from other brands, but it's gonna be a lot of Pearl. Moving out of kids kits and into entry-level kits, my first recommendation would be the Pearl Roadshow. Now these are 6-ply poplar drums, and this comes in at $530. The next step up from that is going to be the Pearl Export, which is a 5-piece drum set with shells made out of poplar and mahogany. Altogether, this is an $800 kit. Moving into mid-tier kits, I would highly recommend the Pearl Decade Maple drum set. I found a 3-piece drum set, which is all I need personally outside of a snare drum, for just $680. The next recommendation would be the Tama Star Classic Performer, which is a 4-piece drum set made out of maple and birch shells. Altogether, this is a $1,400 drum set. The next recommendation is going to be the Pearl Session Studio Select, which is a 5-piece drum set made out of 6-ply birch and mahogany shells, so you get a beautiful combination of attack and warmth, and altogether this kit is $1,700. Now when you get into the mid and high tier kits, be aware that these generally don't include a snare drum, cymbals, or hardware. And finally, moving into the high tier kits, my recommendation would be the Pearl Reference Pure, which is the drum set that I play, which is a combination of maple, birch, and mahogany shells with various plies depending on the sizes of your drum. So it's incredibly versatile. These kits are incredible, and they start at about $3,500. And my last recommendation here is the Pearl Masterworks drum set, because this is a completely custom drum set that you can choose the sizes, the wood, the combination of the wood, the plies, the finish. You can literally create a drum set from scratch to your own personal liking. So the price is incredibly dependent on what type of kit you create, but if you are looking for the Ferrari of drum sets, I would recommend the Pearl Masterworks. Now let's talk about snares. I'm gonna be completely honest, when it comes to wood snares, I can't recommend a ton because I barely ever play any wood snares. So what I would recommend here is if you are going with a maple kit because you like that maple sound, all of those drum sets generally have a correlating snare drum that you can get as well. But what I can recommend is metal snares because that's basically all I play. A classic sounding aluminum snare is going to be the Ludwig Acrolite. A 14x5 is going to be $450 apparently, but I feel like you can always find used acrylites for $150 to $200, and these are incredible snare drums. The next recommendation for aluminum I would also make is the Ludwig Supraphonic. I do like the Supraphonic a little bit more, and it is a little more expensive, or anywhere between $600 to $700, and again, I love that snare drum. When it comes to steel snares, there are not a lot that are actually very great or controlled, but one that I would highly recommend is the Pearl Modern Utility steel snare. I have this snare, I use it, and it is very versatile, and I think it sounds pretty darn good. When it comes to brass, my main recommendation would be the Pearl Premium Sensitone 14 by 6.5 beaded brass snare drum. That's my main snare on my kit, and this comes in at about $650. However, if you want a brass snare drum that will punch you in the face every single time you hit it and has so much life to it, I would recommend the Pearl Reference Brass Snare Drum. The 14 by 6.5 is $1,300, so this is an incredibly high-end snare drum, but wow, this has so much body and life to it. Finally, when it comes to copper snare drums, I have had a lot of luck with this company, and that is Offbeat Drum Co., and this is a local Michigan company making some insanely killer copper snare drums that are combined with maple reinforcement rings. The snare I use from them is a 14 by 8, and I think these are generally around $600 to $700. Now, there are a million incredible snare drums and drum kits on the market, but these are just a couple personal recommendations to help you out. Depending on your space, hopefully now you have the tools to determine whether an acoustic or electric kit is right for you. And depending on what style of music you play, hopefully now you know what sizes, plies, and materials to look for. And finally, I hope you now have a great idea of what kits and snare drums you should be looking at based on your budget. So that was a lot, but thank you so much for watching. Click right here if you want to get my free 6-part course, The Drummer's Guide to Getting Unstuck. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video. Stay true, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.